Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. It is 10:32 a.m. here on January 8th. Thank you for joining me. Canada's housing crisis. That's what we're going to talk about. Well, good morning. How are you this fine Sunday morning? Here, 10:30 a.m. It's a little, well, it has clouded over. It's a little chilly out there today, but not as bad as it can be for January, especially not like it was just before Christmas. Yeah, I hope you're having a good weekend. And so, here in Canada, in every single province and territory, we do and we are facing a housing crisis, affordability. Even when it comes to not just buying a house, but when it comes to renting, whether it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment, 3-bedroom apartment, or three or 4-bedroom townhouse, rents have gone up dramatically here in the city of London, Ontario. We've seen the highest increase in rents in probably 30 years. So I think we jumped something like 29%. Whereas, what people would rent, for an example, a 3-bedroom townhouse, even you went back 5-6 years ago, they'd be around $1,000. If you go back 10 years, 20 years, they ran probably around $800 a month. Today, for that same 3-bedroom, they're going anywhere from $1,800 to $2,400 a month. 1-bedroom apartments are up around $1,200 to about $1,400 for a 1-bedroom, compared when they were around $700 for a 1-bedroom unit. Now, affordability, well, people now looking to buy a home. Over the course, of the pandemic, people were still selling. And what we saw was because, the market, and the supply, so really the demand wasn't there. Neither was the supply. Housing, to buy a house, people were outbidding prospective buyers. And at times, I've seen houses go as high as about $180,000 over asking. And that put a lot of people right out of the market. And then the banks, prior to the pandemic, for people to buy a house, the banks, what they did, they called it a stress test. And what that means is that if your mortgage rate was, say, 2.5%, and then what they would do is that they would see, okay, what if it the mortgage rate went up to 3% or 3.5%? Could you afford that mortgage at that rate? And again, that knocked people out of buying a house because it became more than 30% of their income. Middle class wage, you're probably going to be today what they would consider middle class, probably 70,000 a year. But with the increase in interest rates, increase in rental units, you know, people are looking, 40 to 50% of the wages of paying rent. I mean, if we went back, 50 years ago, you're making 70 grand a year. I mean, you have no issues, but not today. And when it comes to even for people who are looking to rent and raising the public awareness, on addressing discrimination when it comes to if you're just going to be able to rent. So housing providers and landlords can run afoul, in part and out of lack of understanding its application to them. Some may have a mistaken belief they can pick tenants that they find desirable. Good income, full-time job, neat and tidy, great hygiene. And, and it is, and others are, they're confused about the complex rules around what can be used to access prospective tenants, or when they need someone, a guarantor, to be obtained. Now, affordable housing. I mean, what is affordable? I mean, to you, what is affordable housing to you? I mean, shouldn't we be able to, all of us, have a roof over our heads? And that is including people who are on disabilities, who are on social assistance, and finding housing for the homeless. Which, by the way, we have a homeless crisis. not just here across Ontario, but all of Canada. Affordable housing is a core necessity for everyone. Here in Ontario, we are one of the wealthiest jurisdictions in the world. Yet there are still many Ontarians who do not have access to adequate and affordable renting housing. And there appears to be several reasons for this, including the shortage of housing supply. And this is what we're looking at. This is what we're facing right now. This is part of the crisis. Low social assistance and wage rates and discrimination practices by housing providers. Yeah, our minimum wages have gone up over the years. The starting minimum wage here in Ontario is $15.50 an hour. Now, they are looking at, and measures have been undertaken in recent years to address housing supply. And the much talked about Canada-Ontario Affordable Housing Agreement, how much have they done? How much remains to be done? It almost seems like we're just getting started. It's like we allowed this crisis to happen. Now everybody's jumped in, and it's a mess. Social housing, well, there again we have a lack of. For a waiting list for someone who is waiting to get into social housing, it is approximately a 7-year wait. People who have a physical disability and are looking for social housing in a unit that they can use, such as anybody with a disability using a walker or a wheelchair. So that unit, everything's going to be on the main floor for them. But that waiting list is 10 years or more. They haven't built any social housing since the mid-'80s until recently. There have been some new buildings going up. There's a section in the city they called Soho. And it used to be, many, many years ago, it used to be a hospital there. And they tore down that hospital and they built affordable units. There has been some going up here and there around the city, but they're filling up really fast. And the reason why they're filling up really fast is because they take people who are most in need for shelter. And of course, the waiting list. When you get a 7-year waiting list, it's really not first come, first serve. So people who are in the most vulnerable situations are going to get those places. And once you've been chosen for a place, you cannot refuse. May not like the area or whatever the case may be, but you can't refuse the offer, because what happens if you refuse the offer, you go to the bottom of the waiting list. And that's going to take another 7 years. Now, social housing, when properly funded and operated, it has been a very effective way to meet basic housing needs. However, issues with respect to social housing programs have resulted in a chronic housing shortage for low-income individuals and families. And like I said, there are long wait lists, and in some jurisdictions, like here in the city of London, the wait list as much as 7 to 8 years. There's also concerns with the allocation of social housing. For an example, waiting lists may be divided based on whether a person is on social assistance or can afford the market rent. Waiting lists can have a negative impact on those who may have a more urgent need for social housing, and large families may even have a harder time since larger units are even more difficult to obtain. And denying or revoking social housing subsidies and the limit options for appeal may also be a concern. So people with larger families, mom, dad, 3 kids, maybe they got 4 kids. The most bedrooms that I've seen in social housing is 4 bedrooms. But again, the waiting list, 7 to 8 years. And it's been like this for a really long time. And it's just that they just never addressed it. They really haven't. And the need, we thought, 20 years ago that food banks would be something that would be short term. Here we are 20 years later. Not only are food banks needed, more and more people are going to the food banks. Now, social housing providers face their own challenges. Rising energy costs obtained with very low energy efficiency ratings mean that more social housing projects may move into a deficit situation. Similarly, those are a shortage of money to spend on aging buildings. I haven't seen the City of London in many, many years. I mean, if you drive around the city and you drive around where the social housings are, and they, look like they're more than 50 years old, 60, 70 at least. So updating these buildings, repairing these buildings. Now, you probably heard of co-op housing. It's another attractive source of affordable housing for people. And however, once again, there are long waiting lists for co-op housing and very few new co-op developments, and I have not seen any. Now, there are many barriers to establishing new affordable and supportive housing that will provide accommodations for people identified by the code grounds, such as those with disabilities, low income persons, newcomers to Canada, Aboriginal persons, and youth. When we want to build social housing, where are we going to put it? They're going to put social housing in neighborhoods, in and around neighborhoods of people who have homes that are worth $700,000 or more. Because they'll tell you what'll happen. Those people who live in those 700,000 plus house, $700,000 plus, they're going to say, "Not in my backyard." Discrimination in rental housing. Issues of discrimination in rental housing often arise because of a combination of human rights grounds. For example, a young lone mother on social assistance who is looking for rental housing might potentially experience discrimination on the basis of her gender, age, family status, and receipt of public assistance. If she is a racialized person or has a disability, her experience of this discrimination may change or become more compounded. So just because a female with children is on social assistance, it's going to be discriminated. Now, discrimination based on one or more grounds that intersect to produce unique experiences of discrimination has been identified by the commission. So what are the ways in which people experience discrimination in rental housing on the basis of each ground of the code? How does this intersection of the code grounds impact on discrimination in rental housing? Well, securing rental housing. And there are several general ways in which people experience discrimination in renting. And one of the first and most obvious one is when securing housing. For example, people may be screened out or turned away because of their race, their color, and their ancestry, age, size of their family, sexual orientation, or perhaps most common because they earn low wages or are in receipt of public assistance. Now, a question that often comes up in the housing context relates to what is and is not allowed when considering a prospective tenant. Now, landlords have a legitimate need to access prospective tenants, but must do so in a manner that is consistent with the Human Rights Code's decision and provide some guidance. For an example, it is now clear that rent to income ratios, standard guidelines that tenants applicants are spending no more than 25 to 35% on his or her rent. I mean, it's, you know, people who are on, a disability, not just social assistance. Um, People on disability, I believe it is something for a single person. It's around $900 a month. A single person on social assistance is about $750 a month. So where are they going to rent? And we have waiting lists for social housing of 7 to 8 years. And longer if a person has a disability and requires a unit for disabilities, and that's 10 years or more wait list. Rents have gone up here in the city of London. It's seen the highest increase in the province of 29%. When it came to rentals, here in the city of London, we were probably the cheapest place to find affordable housing. Now we're not. We're not as high as Toronto, for a one bedroom. If you want to live in the downtown core in the city of Toronto and you want to rent a one bedroom apartment, it's going to run you about $2,400 a month. Now, if you move, out of the downtown core, you might be, in around $1,800 a month for a one bedroom apartment in the city of Toronto. Or that one bedroom here, still going to be a little bit less. And depending on the area of the city, we're going to be paying anywhere from probably $1,400 to $1,600 a month for a one bedroom. Now, if that's more than 30% of your income, chances are you're not going to be able to rent it. Now, securing a rental housing, so also, there are also be other barriers that can result from seemingly neutral policies or practices, right? From prevent people from accessing rental housing would be no pets, policy being used to prevent a person with a disability who uses a service animal from renting a unit in the building. Would just be outright illegal. It's the same thing, people who have a service animal, which if they go, I've seen this happen. I've read it in the news, and it's just appalling. They go into a coffee shop or a restaurant, and they have their service animal. They have the papers, and I've read news articles, and I'm talking right here. I'm talking right here in the city of London and other cities too, here in Ontario. Is that they walk in there and they clearly have the documentation that this is a service animal. And this person needs this service animal. That they're asked to leave. No pets. Asking them to leave, they have a service animal and they have the papers. Asking them to leave is illegal. Now, a question that often comes up in the housing context relates to what is and is not allowed when considering a prospective tenant. Landlords have a legitimate need to access prospective tenants, but must do so in a manner that is consistent with the code. And the human rights decision have provided some guidance. For an example, it is now clear that the rent-to-income ratio, a standard guideline that a tenant applicant should not be spending more than 25 to 35%. Homelessness, it's way out of control. I mean, it is just an absolute crisis. Then from the city I live in, and um, smaller cities to the south or to the east and to the west, and of course you get into the metropolitan Toronto. Here in the city where I reside in, there's on average people living on the streets. I don't even know if they can even um, really know exactly what the number is. But it's higher than 1,000 on any given night. I don't have to go very far from out of my neighborhood to find homeless people. Now, the groups that have experienced historical disadvantages and who are protected under like we're all protected under the Human Rights Commission code, and are more likely to experience low social and economic status. Poverty is linked with inequality, and particularly for women, especially single mothers and older women, Aboriginal persons, racialized persons, and persons with disabilities. And a person's social economic status is highly relevant to his or her housing situation. Now, it is also clear that the one's social economic status has a direct relationship to the likelihood of becoming homeless. And one of the most extreme outcomes of low social and economic status, discrimination also contributes to the homeless. Homeless people include persons living on the streets, the hidden homeless, who use shelters, or those, are at imminent risk of becoming homeless. And homeless people frequently find themselves at the outmost margins of society and are highly vulnerable to ill health, spread of disease, harassment, abuse, malnutrition, dehydration, sleep deprived, and life threatening weather. Now, by saying that, you know, we are still, we're still so far away from solving homelessness. Yes, wages have, like the minimum wage has gone up, but so has everything else. Look at the cost. Look at the cost of food. I was out with some friends the other night, and we just kind of got on a little bit of discussion about it. You know, basic, basic needs. You know, milk, bread, cereal, eggs, vegetables. You know, a head of lettuce is like $6. That is just outrageous. Not only when it comes to being able to afford a place to live, you still have to feed yourself, you still have to feed your family. And what is a livable wage? Well, when they talk about a livable wage, they'll say, okay, you know what? The city of Toronto is one of the most expensive places to live here in Canada, besides Vancouver and Montreal. Like Canada would probably be, I would say Vancouver would be the most expensive, and then Toronto, and then Montreal. Living wage, they think, for Toronto is around $22.50 an hour. I'll tell you what, they're way off. I mean, if you're gonna rent a one bedroom apartment and out of the downtown core, you're still going to be paying roughly $1,800 a month for a one bedroom. $22.50 an hour, is that going to cut it? Probably not. Here in the city of London, they think that's around $18.50, $19 an hour. Livable wage. And now what we're seeing with inflation, and the rents have skyrocketed, $19.50 an hour is not going to cut it either. A livable wage for here in the city of London where I reside, a livable wage would be $25 an hour. Toronto would be $30 an hour and up. Vancouver, you're going to be making over $30 an hour to live in Vancouver. Back during the pandemic, and we had non-essential businesses had to close, and and things like that. So restaurants, it's hard. I mean, to get people to come back into that sector, when already, they were, making minimum wage or just above minimum wage. Some might have made a little bit more, general managers or whatever like that. They probably made a little bit more money, but nonetheless, people kind of just, stayed away. I mean, they still want, they're still looking for servers. But the wage has to be there as well. When are things going to get better? When is inflation going to come down? It's probably not going to come down for some time. We're going to see our just our basics. Shelter, food, clothing is getting to be more expensive. Families, kids have to be clothed, kids have to be fed. And what about the other things? Entertainment. entertainment for the kids, utilities. Thank you for that. Have all gone off the charts. Economic and social. But on the social side, far too many people, far too many families are, are and probably will be in a situation, and that threat of becoming homeless is going to be becoming real for a lot of people. And we look to, not just our politicians, in the city. We look to the government on what they want to do, what their plan is. Well, here in Ontario, the premier Build Homes Faster Act wants to build on the protected green belt areas that the Ontario government deemed protective. That there would be no housing built on these protected lands. Now they think that's a good idea. And cities and municipalities around the Greenbelt areas are saying, no, we have space. We don't need to touch the Greenbelt. It's too late. We already passed legislation. Should we be building up, or should we be building out? Do we have land that is suitable for housing, instead of destroying and depleting the green belt areas? The downtown core here in the city of London. Over the years, I mean, they've built up more high rises going up. We have an area of the city. It used to be there used to be a hospital. It was a psychiatric hospital. A lot of property. And yeah, they're going to build on there. They're going to build townhouses. They're going to build single dwellings, and they're going to build some apartment buildings on that land. It's going to add probably another 10 streets. That's how big this area is. They never talked about affordability. Now, my understanding, when a new high rise is going up, that there has to be an allowable percentage of below market rent. The builder wanted to build this building. I think it's something like 26 or 27 stories. The City of London wanted them to have, I think it was going to be something around 35 units to be below market. And it took them a long time to hash out. And unfortunately, the city agreed with the builder that there'd be only something like 15 units below market. So what's going to happen in this area? It's on the East End. There was no talk about affordability. How many townhouses are going to be there? How many single dwellings are going to be there? And the high rises. I guess it's going to have to just be, wait to see, what that's going to be, and what is going to be, affordable. We are addressing the situation, when it comes to the housing crisis that we're facing. There's another area in the city, and it's just off the downtown, and it's a sizable property, and still part of the old building is there, and they've knocked down, the majority of it, but it's a mess. It's an eyesore. And the city still hasn't addressed it, and it would be another perfect place that they could build affordable units. Even if they built, a couple buildings on there, maybe 6 stories, maybe 7 stories, they could easily put 2 buildings there. And it could be easily used for below market rent. And every day I drive by there, and I look at this mess, and I just shake my head. In the downtown core, there has been places that have gone up, over the years. But like I say, when they build these buildings, and they're for, people who can't, afford the market rents, they fill up quickly. Because people need them. Where are they going to go from here? mean, of course, we have special interest groups, working on things, city working on things. The government, like I said, the Build More Homes Faster Act. They're going to be affordable. I guess that's just another wait and see. I mean, what is affordable? For people to buy a house. I mean, the average house in the city that I reside here in London, the average house is about $655,000. That's the average price. So what is affordability? 300,000? 200,000? Like I say, when it comes to a living wage, they got. I mean, especially like I said, especially now, with way everything has gone up. What is a living wage? Are employers willing to meet that threshold? Is that going to drive up the cost even more? Because remember, whether we're manufacturing or we're growing or just your basic things that we need and are being made. So if the wages go up, then things are going to cost more. I mean, the people were hollering about the prices of groceries. The grocery stores are making the grocery store chains are making record profits. Everything that goes into the ingredients, that we buy. Like I say, wages go up, so it costs more for that ingredient. Grocery stores pay more for it, and then they're charging more for it when it hits the shelf. Even though even if we set the minimum wage, for an example, say we set the minimum wage at $18 an hour. Things are still going to increase. Yes, that will help somewhat to have money in people's pockets. But the way inflation is going, and inflation will probably go higher, and it would feel like that $18 now would still feel like $15.50 an hour. I really don't know what to tell you, but we got to draw a line somewhere. And I hopefully, throughout this new year of 2023, will things just level off? Or is it going to get worse? Time's going to tell. But I want to thank you for joining me this morning, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Truckers Podcast, FYI. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and the upcoming week. And I will be back out here again, because of my job, being a truck driver, I don't do long haul anymore. I do city and I'm home every single day, but I work long hours. So it is hard for me to come out during the weekdays and stuff like that and fit in a show. Time to time I do, depending on, my day, how I feel, because, nothing worse than doing a show when you're tired and fatigue starts to set in and your concentration goes down, really doesn't make for a good show. So I try, from time to time to do a show, maybe midweek, but mostly on the weekends. And I appreciate your patience and I appreciate you coming out here on the show. So until next weekend, next Saturday morning, 10 a.m. And I'll put up a show. I haven't gone through anything. I got like a whole list of stuff to talk about, and just I run through it and I pick and choose. What's going to be a good topic today. What would be a good topic, and but that'll be up on Podbean. Either later today. But no later tomorrow. So at least if you're following me on the Podbean app, you get the notification that next coming episode for the Truckers Podcast. So again, I want to thank you for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your day, your week. Take care and be safe. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.